hospitals. But it comes as a new warning is issued about a crisis looming for our hospitals, particularly in Victoria and Queensland, as COVID cases rise. Let's discuss with Shadow Minister for Government Services, Bill Shorten, who's in Melbourne, and in Brisbane, 4BC's Scott Emerson. Nice to see you both this morning. Bill, let's start with Melbourne because schools, construction's back. That, of course, is the good news. But the Herald Sun is reporting this morning that the spread of COVID at these protests is far worse than feared. I mean, what did they actually achieve?
Oh, listen, the fact that the protesters have now spread and caught COVID, it just sort of sums up the futility of the whole exercise. It's not Melbourne. The only way we're going to get out of COVID lockdown is to vaccinate. But we've also got to get ready for life after COVID, and that means protecting our hospitals. So the federal government's got to come to the party. We've got to help out here. When we open up, there's going to be more exposure events, so more workers are going to get furloughed and have to stay at home. Our contact tracing system is going to get really stretched, ICU beds. So we've got to do everything we can to get ready for coping and living alongside COVID.
OK, so when you say that, what do you mean? The feds have got to step in and help out here? We know hospitals are a state-run. What do you need Scott Morrison, or what do you think he should be doing right now?
Well, just like they had JobKeeper, I think there's a role here for a hospital keeper, isn't there? It's to make sure that we've got the resources in the hospitals for this pandemic. But something else the government could do, which helps every Australian, is we should be able to purchase home COVID tests in Australia. Did you know that in Scott's hometown of Brisbane, a Loom, a company, medtech company, is selling $300 million US of home testing kits to the United States? Yet we haven't even got approval to buy them here in Australia. The government's got to get its skates on so we can all get on and, get out of lockdown. That's what matters now, getting out of lockdown.
They are definitely behind the ball with getting those rapid COVID tests at home, out and about in the community, Scott. I mean, you would know this. And Scott, just reading this morning too, like the situation that your hospitals are facing, already at more than 100% capacity, when you don't have any COVID really in your state as yet.
Well, that's an extraordinary thing, Ali, because before COVID, we're still facing a crisis in our hospital system. And this is not just something that's appeared this week or last week. This has been going on for last year with ramping in hospitals, code yellows across, more than 30 in September alone, where they can't take any more patients into the hospital. So there is a real problem there. I mean, to some extent, the state's talking about what will happen when COVID comes through as a bit of a shakedown what they're trying on the federal government, where they're trying to get more money out of the feds. But the problem is that they're not running the hospitals well enough now in Queensland, even in the absence of COVID. So that is a concern. In terms of those rapid testing, well, that's going to the TGA. Bill is right. It is extraordinary that a Loom here in Queensland is selling these tests to the United States. They're still not approved here in Australia. And that needs to happen very quickly, because I think it's going to be part of the key part of the plan moving forward. And
certainly with, our kids are going back to school, that idea, if you've got an outbreak in a school, that you don't have to force the entire school into isolation. If you've got these rapid tests, it'll be an absolute game changer. But Bill, let's just go back to hospital funding, because Anna says that she wants more funding from the feds for hospitals. What would you give her?
Well, at the last election, we had a proposal to increase funding for hospitals. The fact of the matter is the federal government gets the lion's share of Australians' taxes. So the majority of taxes we pay in Australia go to the federal government, and then the federal government divvies that up on various priorities back to the states. Our hospitals need more support. It's a fact of life. And the federal government, in my opinion, has been a delinquent partner in properly funding hospitals. So they need to negotiate with the states a better system for funding of hospitals. But we're here in the situation now with COVID, and I don't think it's enough for the government to say, that's not our problem, because already the federal government does provide some funding for hospitals. I just think as the facts change, the government's got to turn up to work.
OK, well, hang on. So you're saying give more money to hospitals. You're also saying to extend JobKeeper. Bill, that is a lot of money going out.
Oh, no, what I was saying is that just like the federal government could find money for JobKeeper, I think that what we need to do is to make sure that we keep our hospitals online. I don't think it's a permanent state of affairs, but I think we know that the modelling shows that if we want to come out of COVID, that it's going to lead to more exposure events. Hopefully, because more people are vaccinated, there won't be as many people requiring hospitalisation. But the point is, we know that if we're going to come out of lockdown, it's time to get ready. What I don't want to do is see what we've seen so often with the Morrison government, that we have a debate 3 months after we needed to start getting busy.
I don't understand why we're having this discussion now when we've been in this pandemic for 19 months. Another issue I want to talk to you both about this morning, you know, this mass exodus of senior politicians we're seeing in New South Wales, of course, starting with Gladys Berejiklian. Bill, Scott Morrison and Dominic Perrottet, who's sort of Gladys's heir apparent, looking likely he'll be voted in today. They have a bit of a fractured past. Word is the Prime Minister once swore at him. That could be a bit of a tricky relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that Mr Morrison finds it hard to work with the premiers, and some people blame the premiers, some people blame Mr Morrison, but Mr Morrison's the chairman of the National Board, isn't he? He's the Prime Minister of Australia. I think it's incumbent on him to improve his relations, because right now, the last thing anyone in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane or any other part of Australia want is to see our politicians fighting each other. And you know, I think Chris Minns, the opposition leader in New South Wales, has shown some maturity. He hasn't joined in, you know, totally bagging Gladys Berejiklian with that shock announcement. He just wants the New South Wales government to steady the ship so that New South Wales can get out of lockdown, and I support that.
Well, steadying the ship, I mean, that's you guys up north in Queensland, isn't it, Scott? Things it's calm where you are.
It is very calm here at the moment, obviously, and still with the triumphant grand final of the weekend as well. But look, premiers are always going to have spats with the PM, and clearly I think the Prime Minister would prefer working with Gladys rather than Dominic Perrottet. But that's just the cards that he's going to have to deal with. And look, I think everyone realises that the states and feds have to work together to get through this. But I think you have to be in some sort of fantasy land to think that the feds and the states are always going to agree on everything. Sadly, I think sometimes you see them just playing politics rather than fighting out for sensible policies as well.
Bill, do you reckon Scott Morrison's going to go to this climate summit in Glasgow at the end of the month? And should he?
Oh, I think he should. I mean, when there's a meeting of world leaders, I want Australia's leader to be there. I think that Mr Morrison dodging the Glasgow Climate Conference when it's one of the big issues the world's going to work on, I think that is like a kid not bringing his homework or turning up to school that day. He just wants an excuse note from his parents. Like, he should turn up, because climate change is a real issue. If Australia isn't at the table with our most senior leader, then we mightn't get the best deal possible for Australia. And I think that if not turning up would be very weak.
I mean, Scott, he hasn't ruled it out as yet, but it's looking unlikely. He says he can't afford another spell in quarantine. That's fair, isn't it, when you've got so much happening here domestically? I
don't think he wants to have any more time in quarantine, but I think the problem he's got is trying to herd his national colleagues there. He's got to get some sort of announcement up, but he can't get the Nats on board, and he's got divisions within his own Liberal Party as well. That is the problem. How can he go to Glasgow if he can't actually put forward a policy, because he's got outcries and rogue MPs throughout his backbench?
Gosh, there's so much going on, guys. I mean, you know, politics, they're never dull, is it? And this, of course, is Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. They're all down. What's going on?
I think there's going to be a lot of people out there very uneasy this morning, having the DTs because they can't do their Facebook and Instagram today.